and thanks for joining us for this special presentation of CBC Saskatchewan News. I'm Brian Enius. It's been a decade since the final report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was released. In it were 94 calls to action to right the wrongs of what it called the cultural genocide of residential schools. One of them prompted the Government of Canada to declare September 30th as a National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. But it's only one day of the year. Here in Saskatchewan, we wanted to share some real-life examples of calls to action taking place. Dan Zakreski tells us the story of a 40-year-old journey of how a handmade birch bark canoe went from a basement in Regina to finding its way home, and what the school hopes the students will learn from it.
I'm Dan Zakreski in Saskatoon, and I've got a question. It's a historical mystery. How did I end up with a handmade birch bark canoe in the trunk of my car in my garage? So this is the story of my birch bark canoe. Back in the mid-1970s, my dad, Orest Zakreski, was the regional director for Indian Affairs here in Saskatchewan. Now back at that time, the organization was very proactive with First Nations, and his job was to go out and give them money. In this particular era, he was going to a lot of First Nations and giving education funding, so they would be able to build schools on their First Nations. So as you would imagine, they were always very happy to see him. And what they did was they gave him gifts, as we still see today. So when I was growing up in our house, we had all sorts of really cool First Nations gear. We had moccasins, totem poles, tomahawks, and after one particular event, my dad was gifted this handmade birch canoe, which was phenomenal. As kids, we always wanted to handle it, and when we were really small, we would sit in it. But it ended up in our garage, or in our house. Now, in 1977, my dad passed away, and then in 1982, my mom did. So the four of us, myself, my younger brother, and two sisters, were left with this massive house in South Regina that we had to sell. And we had a whole bunch of stuff in it that we didn't know what to do with. So we organized a big garage sale and threw everything out there, including the canoe. I have an aunt in Regina named Victoria Gillis, who was an artist and a collector, and she saw the value of this canoe and she thought, there's no way I'm gonna let these kids sell this. So she bought it from us for I think $10 and put it in her basement in Regina, where it sat for the next 45 years. Now fast forward to this year, when Auntie Vicky at this point had died a couple of years ago, and we were having a family reunion. I had another aunt and uncle in town here who were having their 90th birthdays. So Vicky's daughters, Kathy, Ellen, and Lori, came up from Regina and showed up at my house and opened their trunk, and they had our canoe, which I hadn't seen in decades. And they said, Dan, it's finally, time to get it back into your family. So I was so happy and took it. But then I took it down to my basement and I thought, oh, where am I going to put this thing? So the Gillies cousins of mine had come up from Regina for this family reunion. And we went out to the farm where my dad had grown up by Alvina. And I ran into another cousin of mine there, Sharon Zakreski, who's a trustee with the Catholic school system. And completely independent of Kathy, Ellen, and Lori, Sharon came up to me and said, Dan, do you remember your dad having like an old birch bark canoe? And I went, Sharon, you mean the one that the Gillies girls brought up 24 hours ago that I hadn't seen in decades? That canoe? And she goes, yes. And I go, well, as a matter of fact, it's sitting in my basement. And she goes, look, the Cree Immersion School in Saskatoon is opening up in September, and they would really like to have the canoe as an exhibit if you'd be willing to donate it. And I was floored. I told my brothers and sisters. We all had a great cry and lots of laughter over how the canoe has come full circle. It was gifted to my father by First Nations who were grateful for the work that he was doing. He's since passed on, and yet the canoe remains, and now the canoe is going back to the home where it belongs. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, welcome to Awasasak Anamitochik St. Francis School. I'm Kelly Cardinal.
Well, buddy, here's your new home.
Wow, it's beautiful. Oh, I can already picture it now in the elders' room. If you want to join me over there, we
Sure.
can talk more about it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow.
It's amazingly light. It's just a beautiful thing, and we spent so many hours when I was a kid studying this, the way it was stitched together, the birch gum, trying to imagine being out on a lake with it. So I hadn't seen this canoe in some 40 years. It sat in a basement in Regina at my aunt's place. And then when I got it back, it was my cousin Sharon, who's a trustee with the division, said that the Cree school had not only found out about it, but had an interest in taking the canoe. How did you guys find out about it?
You know, I had first connected with Trustee Sharon Zakreski in the summertime, and she had called to tell me a bit about your family's story. And she knew about Awasasak Anamitochik St. Francis School from all of her work within the division. Knowing that we are opening the largest Indigenous language school in Canada, knowing that we had a strong focus on cultural arts, and specifically learning about ancestral technologies, I was happy she reached out because we were able to make a connection to how this would fit beautifully into the new school.
So this canoe was a big part of my family. How's it going to fit into your family?
Well, kinship is one of our primary beliefs in as Indigenous people, and so when we talk about all of our relatives and our relationships with folks, that also connects us to our past, and that's kind of wrapped up in the overarching meaning of the name of the school, but also in what we're learning moving forward. So the school itself has a program plan with 4 main components: land-based learning, learning in community, wellness, and Indigenous STEAM. And so where I see this canoe best fitting would be aligned with the program around STEAM. So we have a beautiful lab upstairs where I think it should go, because it's just a beautiful testament to the innovation and the skills that Indigenous people had as they learned to navigate the land and share that with others. So I think it's going to be an excellent teaching tool. Just looking at how it's crafted and the time, the thought, all of the love that essentially was put into this canoe, and to be able to share that with our family, and for them to go home and be able to tell their parents, aunts, uncles, mushums, kookums about what they've seen from the past, but today.
And that gives me goosebumps. The other thing too is we have some moccasins as well, which will also be part of the package.
Yeah.
What can they do with moccasins? I know beadwork is significant.
Yeah. So there's a focus on the revitalization of language and culture, and cultural arts is a big proponent of all of the work that the children will engage in here at the school. So lots are learning to bead. We have a beautiful Mahigan dance troupe with upwards of, I want to say, 40 dancers who, are bringing back and showing off their culture and who they are. So even their regalia and the beautiful beadwork that you see them donning will be present. But also, I think when we talk about learning and inquiry, as we had talked about before, it's like beadwork is a fingerprint. You'll be able to see where an artifact or an object or whatnot came from based on the style of beadwork, the type of beadwork used, and it's really important because that's part of someone or some nation's identity. And so for the students to be able to learn about it and to be able to sort of put the puzzle together as to where these came from and how they were used and their overarching purpose, I think will be phenomenal for kids to engage in learning about.
So there's the craft and artistry of the canoe. One of the things that has puzzled my siblings and myself for a number of years is where the canoe actually came from. You know, I had made some initial inquiries with the government to see if they had a registry of gifts. My dad was regional director. I'll actually leave you a card to keep with the canoe.
Thank you.
That was from his old shaving kit. But we were never able to figure out sort of where it came from or who gave it to them. Can your students help me with that?
Absolutely. I think it's important that anytime we come into, receiving things, we understand where they're coming from and how we're going about in keeping them, I suppose. So one of the first things I can think about is an inquiry project that students may be able to do. Again, being able to identify specific locations correlating to the beadwork, even the style and the materials used for the canoe, to study their origins and where in the province or where in Canada they might have come from. I think we know that in this day and age, to us, these are sacred things, these are sacred objects, and they're very important that they land where they're meant to be. And so I had talked to our Indigenous elders our Elders Advisory Committee about the coming in of this canoe and if there was any protocol that I needed to follow or should be mindful of going forward. And they also supported a student project where they would be able to study it, to learn where it came from, but also if there's a connection to be made, to reach out and to see if we're able to find out whose community they came from, and to say, hey, look, we have this, and we'd love to share our learning and figure out where its rightful home could be. But also the elders were very strong in their testament to that if it was a gift and that if it's being gifted back to the school for this purpose, then that's okay too. So I think it's going to be a great learning journey for students to be able to try and identify the whereabouts, where did this canoe come from, who made it, and how you and your family came to receive it and where it should go from there. I think it's going to be a wonderful project.
Well, buddy, you're on your way home.
Thanks for staying with us. A Cree community in Saskatchewan is pushing for independence. It wants to break away from the First Nation it was forced to merge with more than a century ago. Alexander Silberman now with their decades-long fight for recognition.
In the heart of the prairies, a First Nation community is trying to build an independent future.
It shows the government that we are serious.
Adam Whitehead is part of the decades-long fight to get the Peter Chapman Cree Band recognized by the federal government.
We're trying to correct that mistake they made.
But you're not waiting on the government to move forward and show your independence.
No, we're gonna dance to our own song now, and we're not stopping until the government finally realizes that we're an independent band.
The community is now building 28 new homes, spending its $50 million share of a recent settlement for broken treaty promises.
This was just a canola field a year and a half ago.
So you're building a new First Nation from the ground up?
From the ground up, yeah, that's what our goal is. Well, I think it's our right to be our own community.
But in the eyes of the federal government, still a part of the larger James Smith Cree Nation. The Peter Chapman Band signed on to Treaty 5 in 1875, creating a new reserve in central Saskatchewan. But an Indian agent forced 3 bands to merge into one in the early 1900s. Nearby Bison lost its land completely, also becoming part of James Smith.
We signed treaties, and yet we were stripped from our own community.
Chief Calvin Sanderson says becoming an independent band would allow each nation to secure direct funding and control how it is spent. The priority here is housing.
That light at the end of the tunnel is coming, and hopefully we can light that candle and once and for all.
The federal government says it's in active talks with the 3 nations to consider recognition.
It's uplifting.
Elder and former Chief Phyllis Head says seeing the first ever band office for Peter Chapman gives her hope.
For many, many years, this issue has been worked on, and it's going to become a reality.
The community says marking its assertion as an independent band will help right a historical wrong, reestablishing its place as a distinct nation on the prairies. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Peter Chapman First Nation.
A herd of Yellowstone bison from Montana took a journey over 24 hours to a central Saskatchewan First Nation. The historic nation-to-nation collaboration was 3 years in the making. Louise Big Eagle went along for the migration.
At this community center on Fort Peck Indian Reservation in Montana, 2 nations across international borders unite for a feast. The visitors are from Mosquito, Grizzly Bear's Head, Lean Man First Nation in Saskatchewan, and they're about to receive a generous gift from the Fort Peck community. A family of 11 Yellowstone bison. It's taking extensive paperwork and medical testing to make sure the bison are in good health. But the transfer is finally happening.
We felt so strongly that we needed to share our buffalo. And so here in the United States, we've been doing that for several years. But about 2.5 years ago, we were talking about it would really be nice to be able to take it up north and share with our relatives up north. And it's critical for our health of the buffalo and that we have genetic diversity.
The Fort Peck Reservation was one of the first to sign the Buffalo Treaty. It pledges to preserve the buffalo and buffalo teachings through conservation.
So this exchange between our nation and our relatives up north, the other nation up there, is critically important because it opens the doorway that had been closed to us before.
This historic event.
Mosquito Grizzly Bears Head Lean Man Chief Tanya Stone followed the Bison caravan from the U.S. to their new home in Saskatchewan. She says the reconnection of the two Nakota communities is important, as our nation struggles with language, culture, and social issues.
I truly believe that if we come together as a Nakota people and nation to nation and alliances, you know, it just builds and strengthens us as a people.
She sees the Bison as an educational tool, as young men in her community will take care of them. They're also a source of food sovereignty, improving the health of members.
I think it's a significant, meaningful just opportunity for the nation. We're learning, we're young, we have a young leadership, we have students that witnessed today the buffalo transfer, and we'll all be able to grow old with the buffalo.
Stone says this was a dream come true for many people, a vision that became a reality. Louise Big Eagle, CBC News, Mosquito Grizzly Bears Head, Lean Man First Nation.
An 87-year-old Saskatchewan woman became the oldest graduate of the University of Saskatchewan's Indian Teacher Education Program.
Louise Fraser, Mr. Wasis Nehewak.
I knew as a young person, a teenager, that I would have to get some education and some training, because there was nothing like that on the reserve.
Louise Fraser earned a Bachelor of Education degree in hopes of passing her language on to younger generations. The residential school survivor plans to spend her time teaching Cree and sharing her story in schools and communities. Congratulations, Louise. The Western Hockey League's Regina Pats have an annual Indigenous celebration night. The team wears custom jerseys and partners with a First Nation to showcase Indigenous culture. Darla Pones tells us this story.
For Regina Pats forward Connor Bear, this night was a special one. The player from Ochapowace First Nation was wearing a custom Indigenous designed jersey and playing to an arena packed with Indigenous fans.
Know that we support one another and just to honor each other and respect each other and just know that we're all one as one.
The Indigenous Celebration Night on Friday was the second time the Regina Pats have partnered with George Gordon First Nations Development Corporation.
So they're great corporate partners with us. They help us put on this great evening where we have the opportunity to honor and celebrate Indigenous heritage, culture, language, traditions.
I'm very proud of our Cree heritage, our Métis heritage, because I got both lineage in my blood, and I'm proud of both. And I think it's about sharing that and showing the rest of society in the city of Regina that not to be afraid of us. They see the negative. This is the positive.
The game announcements were in both Cree and English.
It's really powerful, I think, especially when there's talking in both languages. I think it's Cree. It's really meaningful, and I think it's really impactful because we have so much youth here tonight.
The custom jersey showcased a star blanket design created by an artist from George Gordon First Nation. The jersey was auctioned off after the game to raise money for an early intervention program for young children.
It was awesome. I mean, actually my auntie won the jersey, so it was pretty cool to do that, but I'm so happy that I went that high and we can take that money and put it to a good cause.
Even the non-Indigenous players got caught up in the excitement.
I think it's amazing. I think it's just for the crowd. Like for us, we're having some smaller crowds this year, right? Just with new team and stuff. And I think that big crowd helped us so much. Every goal, every hit, the crowd's there with us. Every TV timeout, they're there for us, and I'm sure the crowd loved all the performances.
In the end, the Pats won 4-2, and the fans went home happy. Darla Pones, CBC News, Regina.
Welcome back. Many Indigenous cultural practices were outlawed for decades. This sacred dance is making its return to one Saskatchewan First Nation after being lost for almost a century. Louise Big Eagle was there.
It's been 80 years since Kaktuishtahow First Nation held a tea dance in its community. To revive the dance, they invited Cree Lodge keeper Ken Saddleback to teach them about it during their week-long traditional gathering.
They call it Kiskwepeta. It's a cookie squeak. In our language, like act crazy. The tea dance comes from Musqueam, Obima. So we're doing it like Obima style.
Long ago, an elder had a vision that new people were coming to the lands and would bring sickness, which would wipe out millions of First Nations people. This dance was to help them overcome that tragic time.
That's the only lodge that's allowed. You can act crazy and dance any style. This is to make people laugh, just to confuse the sickness.
Josephine Kesawasamat was happy to have it come back in her community.
It was exciting, and I need to be honest, I've never witnessed the tea dance. I've never been a part of the tea dance, but I had fun. These lodges, give people identity and pride and changes that negative into a positive. It's like the more people coming to lodge, the more the families are being helped.
Ken often brings his son along to the lodges to drum and has been singing since he was a small boy. But he just learned the tea dance songs 3 years ago.
My dad said that the songs that we have are like for family, so they're just passed down, like his chop-ons and his chop-ons, and then ours just keeps going.
We've been listening to somebody else's story. We've been talking somebody else's language. We've been living somebody else's culture. And it's time, these guys, this camp, bring them home. It's time to come home.
Louise Big Eagle, CBC Indigenous, Kaktuishtahow First Nation.
If you want to learn more about Truth and Reconciliation in Canada, you can visit the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation at nctr.ca. This has been a special presentation of CBC Saskatchewan News. I'm Brian Enius. Thank you for sharing your time with us.